All right, everyone. Welcome once again to the Faces of Business. I'm Damon Pistolka, your host today. And with me today, I've got Bruce Carnohan, the Process Improvement Wizard. Good to have you here today.
Awesome. And thanks for using the wizard word. I say whiz because people get a little bit freaked out about the wizard word sometimes. But
I'm just going there.
Yeah, no, you can go there because I know you like to go there. So I'm good with it. I love being on video, and particularly your guest, Damon. And so a little part of the story about that, when I worked on doing what they call lean process improvements, which is based in Japanese culture and American culture way back. And somebody came up to me one day and they said, hey Kiyoshi, and I was like, and I looked at them, and then I heard the word a couple, and I'm like embarrassed to say, and I took this person, I said, what does Kiyoshi mean? He said, oh, it means wizard in Japanese, so it's a great honor.
Nice.
So yeah, Kiyoshi, Wiz, I just know my stuff, that's all.
Awesome. Well, today we're going to be talking about, as people might expect, using processes to be simpler, faster, better, and let's get going, Bruce. So tell us a little bit about how this Process Improvement Wiz got started.
Yeah, so it's really interesting because I just got back from the UK, and it's funny because I took a walk that I took 61 years ago as a tiny little boy, and it was the first walk I took on my own to go to my first school. And what's amazing, Damon, is not much has changed except they made the biggest change, which I used to hate, and that was the last part of the walk. I used to have to walk on this muddy pathway, and it brought back all these childhood memories, and I always used to slip up on the pathway or get junk on my shoes, and I was obsessed about wanting to stay clean and stay in order. So it goes all the way back to when I was like a 5-6-year-old kid, and I just didn't like dirt on my shoes. and so that was like the foundation for not only I don't like uncleanliness, I don't like discombobulation. So discombobulation, it makes my brain, it's almost like a computer in anti-defrag mode. It just makes my brain explode when I don't have things in order. So being clean and feeling mentally in order, I mean, I know that's a stretch, but so that was actually the genesis of it. And I never realized until I did that walk 2 weeks ago that that's really where it all started. And then fast forward to, I came from an underprivileged family, done a lot of part-time jobs, and I would always do jobs that were either service-based or hands-on product-based, organizing things. So I love to organize things. And of course, I like to organize other people if they let me, but
yeah.
So it goes way back. And then fast forward, 27 different industries, lived in 6 different countries. I've been pretty blessed to do unbelievable width and depth of career experience.
You really have. And I think you've skipped over this because you've worked in some really cool places. Tell us a few of the, that stick out in your head as interesting places. You go, man, this is country, industry, specific facility, or some that just stick out in your head?
Well, one of them that really sticks out is I've never forgotten, I was in St. Louis and I was working for an employers group, and I used to help, little context, I used to help the employers group members see if they were even ready for anything remotely near process improvement, not even improvement, right? So my job then was awesome because I used to get to go tour all of our member facilities. And I've not forgotten a guy called me and said, hey, we're members. I just put my son in charge of this business. Come on out. And it was a foundry. So I hadn't been in a foundry for a long time. So anyway, I drove to a really rough part of St. Louis. And I mean, you can imagine a lot of rusted corrugated buildings. And the first thing I noticed, I drive up to, and there's one car in the parking lot, and it's a Porsche. And I'm thinking, that's really interesting. So anyway, so I go in, we do the happy glad, and the son says, oh, I'll be with you in a minute. So so I said, okay, well, before we get going on, whether we think you're a good fit or not, show me around the foundry. So he said, okay, hang on. And I said, no, show me around the foundry. And he said, oh, I don't go on the shop floor. So this is the son's owner. And I said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, I just come to work in my Porsche, and I sit in the office and I let everybody else do. And I said, you don't know your way around the shop floor? And he said, no. So he had to get his foreman. So that one stuck out in my mind, of course.
Wow. Wow.
And you know what, Damon, it was sad but exciting, because the foreman took me around. I said, well, what's going on here? And there are literally holes in the roof. There's plants growing out of the floor. I mean, it was like a throwback to the end of the Second World War is when they set themselves up. And you know what? Nothing has really changed. So exciting. There was a lot of opportunity. Not so exciting because the owner's son was clearly not going to do good things for the business. So we ended up not working with each other. So
yeah.
So that one's a big stick out. On the reverse side of that, I would say that I did a business turnaround with a guy that I'd done a couple with, and we went into this assembly facility, and talk about having a motivated team. They were awesome. They were losing $10,000 a day in cash flow, but man, were the team motivated. And on the turnaround deal, I have a 30, 60, 90 day program, kind of like you do. And, I just briefed him, hey, I'm not here for you to like me. I'm not here for you to get along with me. We're in trouble and we need to go do this plan. And they were amazing. They followed all the steps. They followed all the guidelines. They came back to me when they needed help. I mean, it was like a dream job. And of course, wow, we did the turnaround pretty quick. Actually, we did it faster than even the ownership thought we would do it. And 6 months later, we're making so much money and taking so much market share from our main competitor that they wanted to come purchase us. So, completely different end of the spectrum. And that's fun because eventually they did hostily purchase us. So
yeah.
But an amazing team building, talk about motivated group. And we did some amazing things for our customers and shareholders, and we stopped losing $10,000 a day, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is. Yeah, that is. And that's, people don't understand the power of processes a lot. And when you really do, and I mean, everything from business process to manufacturing to, how you brush your teeth. There, right. I mean, it is. What do you do? What do you do to your process to get up in the morning? Your process to go to bed. Your process to exercise. Your process to do the books at the end of the month. There's everything that around us that are processes, and that's why when we were talking about this, and we were talking about using process to be simpler, faster, better. I just think this is a topic that can really help people if they put process improvement to use. So when you're, let's just start out with one of your basic things that you like to do when you're looking at a process. So you're coming into a place and say you're looking at something. What's one of the first things you do?
Oh, I love that. In fact, literally today I had that experience. I want to meet the key contact, whoever they are, whoever's been assigned to, and I want to walk it. There is nothing better than walking the process. And what I do, Damon, is a little bit different. Is I actually walk the process what a lot of people would call backwards. So I actually start at the point where the value or the information is delivered to the customer. And then I will walk the process all the way back to where it first starts in that particular facility. And that's often in the receiving and shipping, because often they're combined. And a lot of people are always thrown by that right away. And I can tell. And the reason I do that is a lot of people can't walk the process backwards. They literally get lost because they're so used to like starting when all the stuff comes through the door and going forwards towards the customer. But that's not what the customer sees, right? The customer only sees what they're getting delivered at the end. And so that's one of my little tricks, as it were, not a bad trick, but depending on how well they can walk their process backwards, I know how mature they are, and I really know how well they understand their process. And then the other thing I'll look for is I've got these 10, 12, golden questions that I have in my back pocket. I don't always ask all 10 or 12, depending on how the backwards walk of the process looks and feels like. And then the other thing I will do is I'll always pretend I need to go to the restroom, and the restroom actually out in the facility, not the really nice one in the lobby, or not the real nice one in the conference room that all the customers may or may not go to. But no, I'll go look at, I'll go pretend I need to go to a restroom right in the core of the business, and I'll say, hey, can you show me where the restroom is? And depending on how the restroom looks, I also know how they're treating their people. So those are my little, and I try and have fun with it. I try not to be disrespectful, but it's amazing when you do that, what the customer sees from the process, not what the company is delivering. When you do it from that viewpoint, it's an amazing unveiler of where the good things are happening and also where the not so good things are happening as well.
Well, and I think a lot of times we deliver what we think the customer needs, but if we really ask the customer that we may be giving them too much, we may be giving them most of the stuff and they need a little bit extra, that's really easy to give them. And if we start there and ask them, you can do a lot better job.
Yeah. Actually, over processing or over cycling. Some people call it procrastination at an individual level, but over processing, over cycling is one of those hidden wastes that most of us, we kind of take it for granted, but you don't need to over process, and you don't need to over cycle, and you definitely don't need to procrastinate. Sometimes it's just about, and I had a mentor once, I used to drive him crazy with my procrastination. And he took me one side one day and he said, Bruce, you only need to be 51% to move forward, right? He said, world class, because he came from the mergers and acquisitions field, world class, you only need to be 60% right, Bruce. So, just give me a solution between 51 to 61% right, and let's go. And that was an amazing piece of mentorship, number one. But number two, it really cut through the whole notion of trying to over process or overthink things and just procrastinating, because that's often what happens,
So. I love that 51% right. When you're working in business process, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. That's for sure. I just want to stop for a second and say we had Michael Ryan here today. Awesome seeing
Michael.
you. Anthony Reed. Hello, Anthony.
Yeah.
And then we got Ronald Henderson. Hey, Ronald.
Yep.
And Kenny D.
Kenny D.
Yeah,
a little shout out to Michael Ryan. I'm actually going to meet him for the first time in person after almost a 3-year online, collaboration relationship. So I'm really looking forward to meeting Michael. And I'm meeting with a couple other people in the Cleveland, Ohio area, and they picked a fun spot for us to meet. So I'm really looking forward to that. That's going to be on June 12th. So
all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We just had out here in Seattle, Gail Robertson was just out here speaking at a Women in Aerospace conference, and I got to meet her over the weekend. So that was was good. That was really good. Yeah. It's nice when you can have these begin these relationships online. You can get to meet people in person, and it's really good. I mean, because it's like you know them, and it's just like hanging out with a friend. So it's good.
Well, it's where the magic happens, and people talk about that, but for me, it's about can you really make good memories with meaningful connections, and a meaningful connection. The process for me is do I know their name? Of course.
Yeah.
Do I know where they live? Do I have their phone number? Do I have their email? Do I have at least one social media presence? And and again, people say to me, well, how do you know they're meaningful? Well, you have to say yes to all of those things. And, you know, if you know a little bit about their personality and what they love to do, that's a bonus. So, you
Yeah.
know, because everyone else is connections. If you're not at that 5, 6 tier level of connecting with somebody, they're really not a meaningful connection, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 It's very important. And the people that you want to have close to you, that you take that time to really understand who they are and what they do.
Absolutely.
That's
Yep.
for sure. So when we go back to the process part of this now, give me an example where process has really affected, you've seen it affect people personally. Because a
Oh,
lot of people just go, oh, business, so we're going to use continuous improvement on this or that, or let's talk about a personal use for process improvement.
sure. So, so can I use a recent one for me?
Sure.
Yeah. So, well, actually, two. So, I was in the UK, so I'm always staggered by the mismatch between American service delivery and the UK service delivery. So, I went and actually worked with a young lady called Julia, and she just took the initiative to put a little pop-up LinkedIn local together in Battersea, UK. So they picked this beautiful location, and I'm like, wow, this is, you know, it's like really,
Yeah.
really high end. And I thought, oh, maybe this ain't going to go to anyway. So we walked in. So first thing is the guy couldn't find our reservation. Second thing is, I said, well, okay, well, can we just sit somewhere? He said, oh, yeah, just pick where you want to sit. He didn't want to guide us there. Third thing is, I said, okay, well, while we're figuring out can I have a drink? And he said, well, you have to load the app for that. So, what do you mean load the app? He said, well, we don't do drinks over the bar. You got to order it on the app. You can't take. And I said, you got to be joking, right? He said, no, I'm not
Yeah.
joking. So it took 15 minutes to load the app. So it wasn't 3 clicks or less, and that's a blue gold standard
Yeah.
for me. And when we did use the app, we got all the wrong drinks at the wrong time delivered to the wrong table. How about that?
Oh my goodness.
So so we use that as a little example around, you know, what should we be striving for using simpler, faster, better at a personal level. So I just want to talk to faster as well a little bit. Some people don't realize to go faster, you actually have to slow down a little bit to make sure that, you know, you do have simplicity and you do have better things in place, because if you slow down a little bit and work on those two things, the process will speed up. And again, the restaurant example is a great example of, they thought they were doing a big favor. They were for
Mm-hmm.
themselves, but they didn't really do a big favor to anybody. And so they didn't understand the simplicity of, hey, the customer experience, if you can do something digitally in 3 clicks or less to give the customer what they want, that's ideal. If you're trying to find something physically, in other words, the table we thought we booked, can you find that in 30 seconds or less? And so those are my two like benchmark standards. And I always ask myself, Bruce, can you get to your critical needed information daily in 3 clicks or less? Or can you find something physically in 30 seconds or less? If you can't, then that is a great opportunity for improvement. And in fact, I recently did that because I was actually trying to demonstrate that to somebody who was on Zoom. And it was kind of embarrassing because I said, here, I'll show you how, you know, where your critical information is, because I use them as an example. Well, it took me 7 clicks to get to their critical information. Like, duh. So the point about that is sometimes you got to step back, you got to slow down, you got to just go through the fundamentals again. So I spent one Saturday going through reorganizing all my electronic information, all my workstation information, so I could go back to them and say, hey, you remember when I showed you we did this? Well, then I went back and showed them the improved process. But the key thing there is I did a quick lessons learned. You know, what did Bruce learn?
Mm-hmm.
And what I learned is the old adage, you know, if you can't be a product to your own process, then shame on you. Right?
Yeah.
You've got to
Yeah.
always be the product to your own process, because that's the whole thing about authenticity. You know, we talk about that word all the time. If you can't demonstrate your own product through your own process in the way you want the customer to feel it, or your client or friend, family member, you're kidding yourself. So
Yeah.
that was a great example of how an organization impacts a personal thing. Because I was embarrassed. I was embarrassed.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Like this beautiful restaurant, and we get crappy service. I mean, it was just a
Yeah.
joke. It really was, and it undermined the location. The location was beautiful. It's right by the river, beautiful sunny day, and yet the whole service experience kind of jaded the whole what could have been a miraculously unbelievable experience. But we
Yeah.
laughed about it. So we did
Yeah.
get a laugh about it. That was good.
Yeah. Well, I like your 3 clicks or 30 seconds rule. I think that's good. And one of the simple things that I just did, because I use process a lot, right? I have a process for when I get up in the morning. What am I going to do? It's
Yeah.
in a planner. I have the steps. I know it's stupid because I've been doing it for, well, no, I shouldn't say it. It's kind of seems ridiculous to some because I've been doing it for a couple of years. But if I don't check those things off,
Yeah.
I don't do it the way I'm supposed to sometimes, or it's easy to not do it the right way or do the things that you need to really do. And I had the same thing happen to me in my note taking. If anybody's ever seen, I take
Yeah.
notes. I take lots of notes, right?
Yep.
And my old thing was I just take notes and I stack them up over here, and then I have a stack about this thick of notes, and I'll go through and which one should I keep?
Right.
Well, what I realized is I can't find anything when I want to find it. And then I throw away stuff that I think I don't need, but I end up needing it. And I keep, so the whole thing is I started putting a date and a dash at the top. I scan every one of them now and
Cool.
I file them by the week. I got them in OneNote, so I can go back and if I'm meeting with you, the last time we met, I go on my calendar. When did I meet with Bruce last? It tells me. I go to the week. I look at what we talked about.
That is awesome. Yeah.
It made a huge difference. And now I have all my notes, not just the ones that I thought I needed. I have them all.
Right.
And it's so much better.
And you know what? It's amazing, Damon, the simplicity of using numbers and letter combinations, because that's what I do with my file folder naming. So and when I was trying to demonstrate my 3 clicks or less, which actually were 7, the issue is I'd not gone back and reprioritized my file folder location by numbers and letters. So it didn't take that long, but because I'd let it go for a while, I'd forgotten my own standard work, which is, hey, do regular lessons learned, do regular review. I'd gotten lazy around my own protocol that I know helps me be more productive.
Yeah.
Right. And it is embarrassing, but it's kind of cool that I was embarrassed into doing it, and the person was very forgiving that I showed. But more importantly, once I showed them how I'd restructured it, I think they went away and did the same with their own electronic filing system. So, talk about passing the legacy forward, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a great example of how you can, the regular lessons learned. I just wrote that down because I think that's something that if we're not doing that often, we
right.
miss the opportunity to be better. It's like, okay, even if things are going wonderfully, what would I do differently for it to make it even go better?
Yep. And that was actually, I have a little journal, which I know I've sent you. So this is the Fix It journal. And actually in here, you'll see there's places to put top 7 things to bullet point, and then notes, and then a reward at the bottom of the page. So a suggested reward, and they're usually non-monetary rewards. And that's the other thing. We are really bad at rewarding ourselves for good, productive outputs, right? We kind of take it. We do a pretty good job usually with other people when we're working with other people and congratulating them about their productive outputs, but we suck at doing it for ourselves.
That's a great point, because usually if you're nice and productive, that means you're going to try to get more work done.
Absolutely. Or you attract more work, right? The
Or you
high
attract more.
action
Yeah,
attracts it, right?
that's for sure. That's for sure. So when you come back and you look at some of the examples, do you get called in often to work on business process, like overall business process end to end from order to delivery to customer kind of things? Or is it more in a facility and we're working on a specific part of it? Where are you typically called in?
So both, but where I want to focus, and I'm being very specific about focusing, when I really did my big picture lessons learned, Damon, and how I did that is I started, it's going to sound braggadocious, but I started with all the recommendations I've got written on LinkedIn from all the people that have written them.
Mm-hmm.
And what I did is I looked for common themes inside of that. And what I realized is that my real sweet spot in terms of maximizing the leverage of my time to give other people benefits is in companies that either assemble things or distribute things, because distribution is really reverse assembly.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm really strong in the assembly, and it doesn't matter if it's product or service or information. I'm really, really tuned into the assembly of stuff or the disassembly of stuff. So, and that's actually in alignment with how I put together, I was telling you offline, I put together a 6 module Ignite process improvement, self-paced module, 6 module course.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really geared towards people that are in that assembly or disassembly environment. So, I use the right words, I use the right examples. I have a
Mm-hmm.
textbook that backs it up that was written in that environment. So yeah, so that's where I want to operate, because I love to I like, because always in the assembly or disassembly business, you can make some rapid small improvements to have a really big impact straight away.
Yeah,
And the
that's for
example of
sure.
that, right? So the example of that, my best ever example of that is I went to work in a grant processing office in the state of Southern Carolina. I worked with the executive director who realized they were in trouble, and they were processing grants for underprivileged childcare provision, and it took them an average of 63 days. The grant
Whoa.
traveled 6 miles about in its application processing. When we were done and I gave them the prediction, we're going to do it in 10 days and less than a week, they said, "You are nuts, Bruce. You are just crazier than crazy." When we were done, we actually did it in 9.8 days average time, and the average turnaround time was 4 days. So that's my
Hmm.
greatest example. How did we do that? Well, we figured out all of the stuff that was just completely wasted effort. There was a massive amount of over processing being done. And then more importantly, we freed up literally a 20-foot by 20-foot filing cabinet room. We got rid of all the paperwork, kind of like your example with the notes,
Mm-hmm.
because they could never find anything, because
Yeah.
it was a massive mountain of discombobulated paperwork. So we got rid of it.
Wow. Yeah.
So that's my great. And what was cool though is we made the executive director become almost like a rock star in her own South Carolina, system, and they ended up, talk about great recognition. They ended up being like a model office that all the other executive directors used to go
Mm-hmm.
tour and walk through, and yeah, they did a great job.
It's
Great.
so amazing when you look at like process like that. People don't think, and you talked about 6 miles and 63 days. People
Yeah.
don't understand what the when you until you walk a process, whether it's doing something in an office or doing something even at a workstation,
Yep.
the amount of moving from here to here and here to here and the wait time in between them, and because we haven't really thought about how long it takes Damon to fill out that initial paperwork and for Susan to do her part with the paperwork, and then Jim Becky to do theirs. And we have these big mountains, and when you can kind of level things out and redo it, and then you take that and get more to a one-piece flow, how much faster things actually get done.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. And actually, we also used the concept of an ATM, a little bit of technology. So what happened is, instead of a lengthy paperwork process being done to actually eliminate the grant applicant from the grant process, we set up like a little kiosk that looked like an ATM, and people came. So they actually did a lot of the grunt work that the other people were doing up front. So it was, and everyone said, Bruce, you're nuts. The people won't come to, and they won't come to the machine. I said, well, then they probably don't really want the grant. You know?
Yeah.
So they had all these like blockages in their thinking, and it was just a joy to see to see how it all ended up. And the funniest thing about all that was that the biggest root cause for all of the trouble was nothing to do with the information flow. It was to do with the fact that teams wouldn't work with each other. And the reason the teams wouldn't work with each other is they were always complaining about each other's dress code. And that is the most bizarre root cause experience I have ever had. But once we figured out how to fix the dress code and what people could wear and what people were not allowed to come to the office looking like, and the consequences of if Bruce showed up not meeting the dress code, once we solved that problem, everything else happened. It was unbelievable.
Wow.
So, unbelievable. So talk about immersing yourself in the process. You know, you can only be there to really discover that that's what it was. And it was amazing. And I kind of discovered it by accident, because one of the processes, 4 miles of the 6 miles, involved somebody taking some paperwork and driving it to another city office and getting some processes done and come back. And I just happened to say to that person, why do you drive over there once a week and do it? Why can't you? And he said, it was a he. He said to me, man, that's my only break from all this stuff going on in the office around dress code. And I said, what do you mean?
Wow.
So he was the one that figured out the root cause for me. He didn't know he'd figured it out. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, I just need to get out of there. That's why I take everything 4 miles away and do something on it and bring it back.
Oh my goodness.
And he was doing that once a week.
That it is so interesting, though, what you find as root causes to why somebody does something. And, you know, you go back to the old, just so many old sayings about we've always done it this way or whatever, that just drives me berserk. But it's really,
it was around why. For him, it was around, well, why do you waste? I mean, gas wasn't even expensive. Are you saying, why do you waste your time on gas? And he said, man, it's just a break from all this.
Yeah.
The best part of my week. And it's like, what, then I started to say, well, what do you mean? Asked a lot more what do you mean questions. And of course, once I understood what was driving the negative teamwork or anti-teamwork, I went to the executive director, and she said, well, I kind of heard about a few things. And I said, well, what did you do about it? And she said, well, I thought it was just, people being people. It's like, wow. Well, you didn't see the impact. She didn't see the impact. She was too far away from it to see the impact. Whereas, I was a neutral. I wasn't invested in their day-to-day ownership, but I was able to fathom it out with the guys' help. So we got it fixed, and they did a great job. Talk about, so the solution was one of the most creative I've seen as well. So what they did is they got all these magazines of women and men, and they cut up pictures, and they created what was unacceptable dress code on one board. And then alongside, they had all these other pictures, acceptable dress code. It was right in the lobby where everybody came in. And what happened is they had to pass by this desk that was a receptionist, and she basically monitored. And if they were good to go, good to go. If they didn't meet the dress code, they agreed. The consequence was they would go home, change, and not be paid for it.
Wow.
How about that as a consequence?
Yeah. Yeah.
I would have never dreamt up that confident,
Yeah.
or for me to try and say, hey, this is the consequence, what it needs to be. I would have been a lot more lenient.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah. Well, that's,
they figured it out. It was amazing.
yeah. Well, and if it makes a difference in the productivity, then I mean, you really need to do it.
Yeah, their productivity it was one, it was the energy in the office changed as well.
Yes. Yes.
That was the key thing. I knew there was something off. I thought it was all the paperwork stacked up all over the place that was off, but I would have been so wrong.
Well, yeah, if you were in a situation that made you uncomfortable or something like that, it just really is not good. It's hard to do. It's hard to work. It's hard
Yeah.
to do your best work.
Yep.
It's so interesting listening to this because I started out in engineering and working in the factories and working on processes in the factories. I started out in high volume assembly, not high volume like spark plugs for high volume, but something where you're making 15, 20,000 every shift, day in, day out, or something where you're making in molding where we were making 30, 40 million or something a year.
Right.
And when you look at and you take that the minute detail that you have to look at on a process there, and you start to work into the business process like you're talking about, it's really, it was that transition to working into a factory and then moving into the business. Wow, you uncover so many things when you start to look at it.
Right.
And all those things that you talk about in the factory, like placement of tools and how far you go and workstation design.
Yep.
Have you seen that where because you've been working in the factory, it really translates well into what you're doing with office or administrative kind of things?
So it works the same both ways. So here's, we all have a power
Yeah,
zone.
let's go the other way. Yeah.
Yeah, so we all have a power zone, right? So
Yeah.
this is it from here, turn around, and then go up and go down. If you don't have everything you need to add value to your process in your workstation in that parameter, then you have room for improvement. And it is amazing to me how many people, I mean, I work standing up for that very reason.
Mm-hmm.
I have everything I need. Here's my vision board, literally. I have everything I need in my power zone. I have filing boxes underneath me here.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't want to be out of my power zone. And if everybody could work in their power zone, number one, ergonomically, it's a lot more healthy. Number
Mm-hmm.
two, you don't over process all that wasted effort.
Mm-hmm.
And then and then it just makes your day, I don't know, it just adds like breath and light to your workstation. And the reverse of that is I've worked in workstations where you can't even see properly.
Yes.
And there's no fresh air flow. There's no, so people get set up to fail because you always get what you design when you design a workstation, guaranteed. So if you want a high activity, a high output workstation, you've got to make it so that the person can work always in their power zone. No excuse. Whether they sit, stand, do both, you've got to help them be successful in how they use their energy in their power zone. And usually that is a huge thing, particularly in high volume. You may, where you've got tens, 20s, hundreds of people. If everyone works in their power zone, the savings and the energy that gets released to go make improvement somewhere else is unbelievable. It's hard to fathom.
That's incredible advice there too. And the other thing is, if you work in that power zone, you're much less prone to injury if you're doing more physical work too.
Absolutely, yeah. So safety drives that. So I should have said that. Safety first, right? Forget
Yes.
about everything else. If you're not working safely and make safety a priority, then shame on you as a manager or an individual. It works both ways. So
Yes. Yeah. When we talk about working in that power zone, we had some experience one time when back when I was managing facilities where we had someone that was building conveyor belts, and we used to make checkout counters for grocery stores. So, you've got these
Right, yeah,
conveyor belts. They're different
yeah.
lengths, and they're sometimes they're 4 feet, sometimes they're 6 feet. Well, this person and the company was 60 years old.
Mhm.
So it kind of had grown up around this. And this one person that had done this had doing it for quite a while. And they had a table where they would lay out all these and
All
start them all, right?
right.
And when we did the lean event and we started looking at it, that person walked like 4 miles a day or something
Oh,
because
yeah.
the parts weren't close and everything else. And I
Yeah.
still remember we redesigned it, and boy, I wasn't quite sure because we said, okay, now you don't have 4 tables, you have 1, and everything is right here, and we're going to see how it works. And he
Right.
come back a week later, and this is so incredible because I get way more done, and I'm not tired when I go home.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's like you get because people don't intuitively think about the fact that you can get way more done and go home with more energy
Yeah.
if you are efficient in the way you design your workflows wherever
Yeah.
you're at.
Yeah. And the trick there, and people always look at me cross-eyed when I say it, you will always get what you design. So if you've got inconsistency in your process anywhere, it's something to do with the design. You've got inconsistency designed into your process. So, and then the other thing that I am always staggered by is that when people know they need to get a different productive output or change, they are so reluctant to change the productive input. It's nothing to do with the process. So if you want a different outcome or a different productive output, you have to go look and work on the right productive input that's creating that productive output. It's nothing to do with the process. And people get
Can you give an example of that? I'd like to hear your example, if you got one you can think of.
so measuring. So if you're trying to make parts, one part that fits into another,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not quite jiving, well, if you go look at what the parts measure when they go into the process, and you'll often see that the parts are never designed to go together.
Oh.
Right. So then they do all this process. They might trim it up. They might, blow on it. They might measure it a few times, and then they might say, oh, now I need to get that part to match with this part, and I'll put that together. So they do all this processing, and it's like, but guys, for those two parts to fit together, they have to observe some basic engineering rules and basic tolerancing. And when you go look at the drawings, they're not designed that way.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. So the
Great
productive
example.
input is not giving you what the productive output should be. So that's a very
Yeah.
simple example. Now it's more complicated than that normally, because there's a lot of inputs that go into making what you promise to make for your customer.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, but you have to dissect them. You have to dissect, and then work on the one that's giving the greatest impact to the output of the process.
Mm-hmm.
Start on that one first, because if you get that one lined up better, then guess what? All the other things kind of fall into place a lot better too. So
Yeah.
so tolerancing and mismatching and wrong parts for wrong things. I can't tell you how many engineers I've seen design, the wrong parts for the wrong use, because they didn't understand that the customer is really going to do this with it when they thought they were going to do this with it.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's that's really cool. So change the input to get better output.
Yeah, or
And
if you don't like the output, go look at where the inputs are coming from. That you're doing some process on. Where's it coming from? And
mm-hmm.
another great example. I used to work in in the molding, and we used to do a lot of engine maintenance and bridge maintenance and all that. And never forgotten, we had some bridge maintenance out in the field, and it was somewhere in the Middle East. Well, guess what? The bridge mains were designed for a temperature range of this, but in the Middle East,
Yeah.
did this. And everyone was saying, well, these don't work. It's like, well, no, they don't work.
Yeah.
Because the engineering guys have said, oh, well, it's the right size, it's the right shape, it's the right color, we'll put it on that bridge. Well, they forgot to look at the ideal operating temperature range. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Considering everything to make sure it works. That's for sure. Just look at the other things. So you mentioned this too, because this is great. Before we got on, it's so awesome to get to talk to you about process, because man, I could spend hours talking to you and learning from you. I can see and hear in your mind and see it in your eyes that you're one of these people that can just walk in, and you've been doing this long enough that you just see things that other people don't see.
Yeah.
And you're that when we before we got on, you were talking about leaving a legacy in this 6-module online course you're developing, called Ignite.
Yes.
And let's talk about that a little bit before we finish up today, because man, I just really want people to be able to learn more about you and learn from you if they can.
Well, thank you for that opportunity. So yeah, I have 48 years ish of a lot of process stuff in my head, and about 9 years ago, there was a textbook created. Actually, it was modeled off of what we did in that grant processing business, but there's a lot more kind of experience and experiential knowledge that's in between my ears. And both my parents have gone. My sisters live in the UK. I'm single, so it's like, wouldn't it be, and I had this moment back last fall where it's like, my God, and I already know I'm going to be cremated when I pass on to another life. What a shame it would be to have that 48 years of stuff that's between my ears just go up in flames when I'm no longer here. So
Yeah.
So then I started to think about, well, how I'm going to do that. Anyway, fast forward, I found Veronica. She's a V-Power coach. She's very prolific here on LinkedIn. She's got an amazing process for people like me that have so much experience, they just don't know where to start. And that was the problem. I didn't know where to start. I mean, I have the textbook, I have my journal that I created, but I didn't understand how to pull all of that knowledge out and put it into sequential, step by step, easy to digest, self-paced modules that you have to account for people's different learning mechanisms. People learn completely uniquely to them.
Mm-hmm.
They learn completely differently in their own time. So it's like, well, you can't just do that in a book. You can't just do that in a series of videos. You've got to think about, well, how do you make it flexible? So that's what Veronica did. She spent countless hours trying to really understand the way my brain works, and she was amazing. I would say, I talk a lot when I'm passionate about what I do. I'd say 4 sentences. She'd say, so Bruce, you mean to say this, this, and this? It's like, how did you do that?
Well, that's awesome then.
4 sentences down to 3 words.
Yeah.
And she said, well, I've been doing it for a while, and guess what? I have my process. It's called, it's called Impact, and she has lots of blueprints and lots of processes, and they work, but it's hard work. A lot of people don't realize getting all that out of here, it's been the most intensive internal work that I've had to do in my entire life. So it's unbelievably hard work, but with the right person's help, right guidance, you get there. And I'm close.
So when do you think you're going to have this ready to release?
So I'm just vetting the landing page for people to be able to get on a pre-launch list if they're interested. I fully recorded 2 of the 6 modules, so I don't really need to do all 6 because it's a step by step. People need time and effort to. But what I am doing to encourage people, and my gift back to people, is module 1 will be complimentary, but they will have to rent or buy the textbook and the journal. So minimal investment, maximum exposure. May not be for them, and that's okay, but it may just be for them. And hey, I might be able to give them 48 years worth of my stuff in 6 modules.
Nice. So where can people find this?
So I will post the landing page when this goes out. How about that?
Okay.
So
that sounds great.
It's on the back end of my website, processcleanup.com, but the page is not live. So
okay.
I literally sent it out to some people in the network that I know will give me a lot of objectivity last night, and some people
Okay.
already looked at it, and so I'm waiting for a
Awesome.
little bit more feedback. You know.
Awesome. Well, it's exciting to see that you're doing this, and I really like the idea of building that legacy and sharing it with other people. I mean,
Sure.
because it would be it would be cool to think about after after we're gone, that something like that could be left behind at a library or something like
Right.
that, and imagine somebody discovering it and going, wow, this is incredible.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
it
Well,
really is something.
well, and the other thing is, I've been talking more recently about, my what I call my jive hive. So there are people I jive with, but the hive concept actually came from Dr. Alexandria Rosso, because we were talking about, well, how do you know the right people to attract? And anyway, so hive, honeybee, bees, high quality honey. So I just put together this thing called Jive Hive, and the point about the Jive Hive is typically they're a generation younger than me. They're typically high potential leaders. They don't know they're high potential leaders necessarily. And so
Hmm.
the other way the Ignite modules are designed is to actually help that person really get clear in themselves about, hey, they are a high potential leader. And if they do all these modules and keep doing all the stuff they're already doing, they can advance their career in lightning warp speed.
Yeah.
So that was the other piece that's subtly driven into the design of the Ignite modules. It's to help our up and coming high potential leaders
Nice.
very
Nice.
specifically. So not only is it a legacy around the knowledge not disappearing, it's actually passing on the tools for our up and coming leaders that are going to shape our world. So,
Yeah. That's
maximum.
incredible. That's incredible, man. That's so exciting. It's so exciting. And like I said, we're running out of time here because
Sure.
but I could talk for hours about this with you, Bruce. It's such a, we'll have to have you come back and after you get some people through the online modules and you're done with that and you get some experiences, we'll have to have you come back and we'll talk about, we'll get some good process stuff and come up with some good things to talk about. But just so good place to find you, LinkedIn.
LinkedIn is my number one. As you know, I'm a live stream host like yourself. So
Mm-hmm.
thank you for letting me have the guest experience. I'm fascinated. Our processes are almost identical, so it's interesting.
Yeah, cool.
Um,
Cool. It's been great
and
to
then,
have you.
yeah, and then I extend to YouTube when I do live stream host, and then I'm actually one of those more mature guys playing on TikTok. So not quite sure what the strategy is yet there, but I have found somebody that's going to help me get to my next level of strategy. But I want to give a shout out to Shri. Shri actually forced me to do my first live on TikTok, which kudos to her because I did not want to do that. So Shri helped me with
Awesome.
that. Gillian Mulholland actually showed me and actually loaded my very first fast tip videos out there. And then Mayan Gordon was the person that got me to realize it's nothing to do with dancing for you, Bruce. It's about how can you share your knowledge in fast tips in the business and technical and training arena, because I didn't know that TikTok is segmented that way. You can decide, where your content ultimately ends up by using the right hashtags. So
That's
yeah, a lot
awesome.
of people don't get that. They think it's just singing, dancing, people being goofy, but there is a serious professional development, management development. There are some serious players on there using TikTok very effectively to pass on their knowledge. So
Awesome. Awesome. I did not know that, but I'm going to be checking that out. So Bruce Carnohan, if you're looking at him on LinkedIn, he's the guy in the blue shirt.
yeah.
Remember that. And I was thinking about that when I get on. I put on a blue shirt today and I didn't even think about it, but I should have had a different color. So you could be the
Oh, you're
only
good.
guy with the blue shirt. The
Well,
blue
I know
shirt
it's your
today.
favorite color from prior conversations, so I
Yep.
no problem with you. I know you support me, and yeah, and I'm the only guy in the blue shirt I think on there. I mean, there are others, but they don't use my hashtag. But my main hashtag is the one in my title here. Simpler, faster, better is my method. Anything to do with methodology, case studies, experiences, stories, you're gonna, you can search under that hashtag, and you'll get a truckload of stuff that will be more than you need to read.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Bruce, for being here today. Today we had Bruce Carnohan. We were talking about using processes to be simpler, faster, and better. And man, did we get a dose of knowledge today. Thanks so much for being here, Bruce. Thanks everyone for listening. We will be back again. Whoa, it's a holiday weekend here in the US. Not going to be here on Thursday or Tuesday of next week because we're going to take a little time off, but we'll be back again later next week. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye.
Bruce.